right, guys, welcome back to another video. We have a major story to discuss here that has just recently taken place, and that is an announcement here from Bungie that they are laying off and restructuring their business. Now, as we know, Bungie was acquired by Sony back in 2022, and the acquisition had went through, and there was a lot of discussion as to what could this mean for the future of Bungie and the future of Destiny. Would Sony come in and impose their will on the development studio and then have to have layoffs, have to have restructuring, have to change the way that they develop games? And generally for the first 2 years of this acquisition, that was kind of something that people were thinking wasn't going to happen. And especially since Bungie blatantly just came out and said that this acquisition will not change the way that they work, will not change where they release their games, and it's basically just going to help them with their creativity being under PlayStation, having more resources, more money, and all that stuff. In fact, this was an article posted back in 2022 from the Washington Post saying Bungie leadership assures employees that Sony deal will not result in layoffs or restructuring. And here are just some quick quotes from this article. It says, though Bungie employees said leadership has assured them there will be absolutely no layoffs and nothing major in terms of restructuring once the Sony deal closes, the acquisition represents a notable shift for the Washington game-based developers. You had this quote here saying, we're cautiously optimistic in my circles. If we remain as independent in design and direction as our leadership claims, it will be good. I think, however, Sony-owned studios are not famed for their great working conditions. And this employee says, based on everything I have heard today, there is no indication that we will be changing any of our day-to-day practices at Bungie. So that was the overall outlook right after the acquisition. It seemed cautiously optimistic as to where Bungie was going to be going and the content that they were going to be creating. And I mean, Destiny, of course, is their big hitter. They just put out a recent DLC, which I think did pretty good. But now we have a new announcement from Bungie that kind of goes against everything that people had thought, expected, and just falls in line with the way that the industry is going here in 2024. To be honest, it's not that surprising when you look around the industry as to what is happening with closures and the shrinkage and kind of bringing the industry back to normal. That's kind of how I look at it. A lot of people are looking at this as doom and gloom, like it is going to be the end of gaming and all this stuff, and I don't think it is that at all. My opinion is we are getting back to normal, where there was a major overinflation, where you had big corporations and CEOs trying to cash in on the greed during the pandemic, and now because of that greed, we are falling back to normal, and a lot of people who got employed during that time are going to be out of a position, or even people who have been working at these companies longer, which is just unfortunate to see. But this is what they put out. They say the new path for Bungie, and they give a major breakdown as to what is going on at the company, I guess, and kind of what is happening here. And I'll go through some of the important things because, of course, there's a lot of just corporate jargon and mumble jumble stuff no one really cares about in here. But they say, that means beginning today, 220 of our roles will be eliminated, representing roughly 17% of our studio's workforce. And they're saying due to the rising costs of development and industry shifts, as well as continuing economic conditions. So 220 roles are being eliminated. 70% of the studio's workforce are just being wiped off of the slate. And this goes on top of earlier firings or layoffs that they had in the year. They said this actions will affect every level of the company, including most of our executive and senior leader roles. And they mention here as to kind of what's happening with SIE and Bungie, saying first, we are deepening our integration with Sony Interactive Entertainment because they are also going through a restructuring after these layoffs. They say working to integrate 155 of our roles, roughly 12% into SIE over the next few quarters. And SIE has worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible, enabling us together to save a great deal of talent that would otherwise have been affected by the reduction in the force. And second, we are working with PlayStation Studios leadership to spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development. So two major things have occurred. They laid off 70% of the workforce, and they're taking even more of the workforce at Bungie and integrating it with an SIE to spin it off to work on other projects. This is kind of sounding like, to be completely honest, another third-person action adventure cinematic game that they are working on here, which is right in the same pipeline as every other Sony game that they do release. Now, they say, let's unpack how we ended up in this position. It's important to understand how we got here. For over 5 years, it has been our goal to ship games in 3 enduring global franchises. To realize the ambition, we set up several incubation projects, each seated with senior development leaders from our existing teams, and we eventually realized that this model stretched our talent too thin too quickly. It also forced our studio to support structures to scale to a larger level than we could realistically support, given our 2 primary products in development, Destiny and Marathon. And then in 2023, our rapid expansion ran headlong into a broad economic slowdown, a sharp downturn in the games industry, which to me is kind of exactly what I said at the beginning here, is that the rapid economic or the rapid expansion was because people were stuck at home and couldn't do anything. And to sit back and think that this was never going to change, to me, is absolutely crazy. It just reeks of greed from all of these companies. And now, of course, there is a slowdown in gaming. There is a slowdown in the amount of time and money people spend on gaming because the world has gotten back to normal, where you can go outside and touch grass. So there's a lot of people out there that just aren't playing as many games. They say our quality missed with Destiny 2 Lightfall and the need to give both the final shape and Marathon the time needed to ensure both projects deliver at the quality our players expect and deserve. And we were overly ambitious. Our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded and we began running in the red. And then after this new trajectory became clear, we had to change our course and speed, and we did everything we could to avoid today's outcome. Obviously not enough. They had to do all those layoffs, but that's kind of what happened. It sounds like greed. And then greed got too much. They're in the red. Not enough people were buying the game and spending money. Now they have to make cutbacks to kind of get back to normal. Now, there are some reactions here as to this whole announcement. And these are from employees. These are from people who are really pissed off at Bungie. You have Nadia here on X, and Nadia was music at Bungie. And she writes this in response to Bungie's announcement, saying, "Looks like I got hit. I work a lot and I'm obsessed with work. Everyone knows this. There's nothing I could have done to not be laid off. In fact, I was literally working so much that so many people told me you'll be okay. We need you to train and manage the outsourcers." And then they say, "Who's going to hook up with the music? I have no idea." And then you have all the responses of people sending their sorry and condolences to her losing her job. You have this person here, Mads, on Twitter, on X, who is a community manager at Reckless Games, saying, "Dropping the news that you've laid off 220 people in a second round of layoffs after launching your most successful DLC to date and then going private immediately is cowardice on an embarrassing level." You see Pete Parsons here, the CEO of Bungie, and of course, that's what the cowards generally do. They go private because they don't want to face the heat when a bad announcement does come out, and that's what he did here. You have Jeff Grubb, who weighs in, and this is a pretty interesting thread. Jeff Grubb here is saying Herman Hulst now runs Bungie, and this is a response to somebody asking if he had heard anything on this. And also says here, also they attempted to soften the blow by sending many people from Bungie into SIE instead of just cutting them. I thought the numbers of jobs lost was going to be closer to 350. And he says, "I'll put it as far as I know, which isn't everything by a long shot. In time, Bungie will lose its autonomy and will become like any other PlayStation worldwide studio under SIE and Herman Hulst." So basically, it sounds and looks like Bungie is just going to be another first-party studio that is running and functioning the exact same way. What could that mean for the future of their games? And of course, one of the main things Bungie did say when they got purchased by Sony is that they would be able to still have that autonomy, select where they release their games, and continue to develop the games that the way they have been doing it. And right now, if what Jeff Grubb is saying is true, it looks like that's going to all shift under Herman Hulst and under SIE. Now, will their games still be released on multiple platforms? Yes, more than likely, because that's the way that SIE is going. If you're a PlayStation fan out there, they are releasing their games on multiple platforms, so you would expect Bungie and Marathon and Destiny to do the same. But they are definitely just shifting this under Herman. And if we have here Chris Wolfhart, who writes this: "The tell-all book about how Bungie bosses took a buyout, realized it was impossible for them to last long enough to get their final checks because of their bad management, and decided to slowly burn the rest of the company to ride it out will be riveting. It says, reminder that this is all literally because of Bungie. If Bungie is an X amount of profitable, Sony gets to replace leadership and they lose out on part of their golden parachute. So they are quite literally destroying the studio to try and make it to the final payout. And that was a thing as well that was coming out after the acquisition, where we were hearing that they had to reach a certain amount. And if they didn't, Sony could step in and do what they had to do with the studio to make sure that the studio was profitable. And that is kind of exactly what sounds like is happening here with these recent layoffs at Bungie. But that is a major story, and I'm sure there will be more information and more things to talk about as we go on. But I wanted to talk about it right now because Bungie, as we know, it is no longer. But I'm going to end the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video.